Oh, yes. The machine can do it. This is the first. In the future, there will be many more computing machines, thinking machines.
In a shed down by the docks lives a very clever box, and its children will one day rule the world. Only one man knows the potential that it shows, how its DNA will spread throughout the globe. Each time we can't explain what it's for and what its aim, but it takes from algebra and sum. But built with his own hand, he can't really understand how important it will be in days to come. Be the difference, engine, lurking in a Limehouse backstreet shed.
£1,000 worth of oscilloscopes. So that's the two servers and a client. So it's just a client server. So there could be loads of these. Essentially, it's a big physics type job. So I'll do a quick demo. Bear in mind, this is development software. It's teetering on the edge of being beta software, but it still throws up a few surprises. So it's a bit early, really, for a code review. But code reviews, I think, they're, in my opinion, and I think it's the computer scientists have done the studies. If you've got a team of programmers and you want the best benefit, then you do code reviews as a team. You sit down and do code reviews. And it makes an enormous difference to the quality, to the teamwork, to the whole process. It makes much better software. The reason a lot of other things get pushed to the front, like I don't know, it's because you can't really write books about code review. You can't really sell code review as a noun and do lots of presentations on it, because essentially it's the hard work of having well-trained people looking at your code. And then it's also the hard work of showing the code, which is another thing that software engineers don't like doing. So I'll do a quick demo of it. So essentially, here's my two servers. This is a client, and they sit there chucking out states. So they're connected now, which says there. And then we can set all our verticals, or some of the verticals. Set all the time basis. So this is a synchronized, essentially one big ass synchronized oscilloscope. Thanks to Sash for sorting the synchronization. It's got quite a lot of functionality. So this is chuntering along in immediate mode, and you can do stuff like user channels, give it names, you can pop up graphs, add cursors, do measurements, you can pause, you can have multiple graphs, so it does all sorts of coverage like that. That setup can all be saved and loaded, and every time you move something, it will want to do save as. So if I load, this was giving me JIT earlier, so what will go horribly wrong. It's like timing issues with my client servers. Oh, look, there's my error handler. You can see here's its graph set up, and if I've moved it, you can see in the darkness of the client that stars come up, so I can save that again, and that will save the position of the graph of various other comments. So which is all okay. One of the more difficult challenges is to get the different distributed and embedded PXI racks all being synchronized. And they have to be synchronized to better than, I think the spec is 3 or 4 nanoseconds. So it's significant. So talking about wizards, and this one's not actually a state machine, but it's got links to drawings and things like that. But this is system synchronization. So you want the whole entire system running off one clock being synchronized. Bloody difficult. So here I'm triggering each card of positive channel. So all I've got is a pulse generator, and I'm splitting that pulse and capturing the edge of it on various channels. I'm also using it to do the trigger. So it tells us how far away and how unsynchronized all the different scopes are. So this is a big ass sleep machine. So now it's talking to the servers and making sure that they're all set up in the right order. They're all phase locked. What else?
Yeah.
Phase lock loop. PLL's phase lock loop, isn't it? Yeah. These are the servers just reporting back their state. Oh, who's going to find out? Cool. It's funny, I've had this working perfectly for 2 weeks, and I had to do a demo yesterday to some French guys and start playing it.
We should maybe say, waiting for saying, come on.
Got time out on it. So it'll bug out, isn't it? Oh, time's very good. Come on. Try that again. That might actually work. Find out on the very last thing. Excuse me while I just disconnect them. Try again. This is only a one-off thing. It has to do it just to get it going and it's set up for the rest of the day.
Or do you know your little icons in your list box?
Oh, I drew that. Yeah, it's a custom. Little master, isn't it? Yeah, I quite like them actually. They're quite useful. There we go. Yeah. That was quite pleased with that. Get it all there. Right, let's just enable them again. Set the time base up to something interesting. So it's a gig sample a second. Drop MasterCard in. Trigger card in. So this is just, like I say, it's one square wave going out as a pulse. And we're just picking up that bit of it. So if I go like that, zoom in. I'll tell you what, that little HP pulse generator is a lot of feedback. It's brilliant, look at that. that's like 15 nanoseconds across. Stunning. So we can do stuff like, we've got some interesting things going on here. So there's quite a big difference on that one. That's forward actually. But the reason there's got a big difference is because it's going through a slightly different path, and it's actually on a 1.5 meter BNC lead. So it's triggering off of, oh, it's probably because it's on the hook. If I run the trigger, it's because it's forward because the trigger signal. I think I said 0.8 and you see it. I've done trigger 0.8. But you can actually measure the Young's modulus of the BNC cable. work out how fast it's going down there. So it's quite groovy like that. Yeah, and I do various other things like we can measure that difference now. Of course, I always get it back to the back. Got a start cursor and then cursor. So it's got some posh little measuring facility. Yeah, I don't want to do that. Excuse me while I fiddle around. Oh!
We were all sat here watching.
You were waiting for it, weren't you?
Waiting for it to happen. Now you have more than two to chart stuff. But you don't want to replace that. It's also like you take a lot of time to learn how to do this.
So we can do things like. Wow, that's quite big. Need to investigate that in a second. So. Must be something wrong with the connectors. All I can think of. Oh no, it's because it's picking it up here. Okay, I'll set the trigger levels. Yeah. So anyway, you can tell quite a lot about the signal, but you can see here the white, which is the master. So that's generating the trigger, and red, which is the other, is the slave, but also generating the trigger, is next to nothing. So these are two completely independent racks. And they are damn fine. We're in picoseconds now. It's ridiculous. So I use my that's one of my little buttons. That I used vector-based stuff on, and that one there is too. So you can do kind of that stuff. Error handling. So what I do with my error loop is I just bring them up here. So you can see that goes red, tells me what time was the latest error. So if I do something daft like, I don't know, I can generate an error already. I'll do that now. Getting other details like the rack temperatures. This tells me the version number of the rack, software that's running, various other bits and bobs. I also get readings. So essentially, this whole system is designed to, and these are £1 million systems that for big physics. So essentially, they make a big explosion and measure the details of that as one time. So this is the newest bit, really. So, essentially, it's just doesn't really need to defragment. So we can just see that's the latest one. 1712. Yeah. So additions are going to be, I'm going to have some way of post-processing it because they've all got their own custom files. I'm favouring an executable now where I put in a command line of the TDMS file, and it's a convert TDMS to something else, and you just build the executable. And that's I can just dump them in as I want.
So each stays with separate TDMS file.
This will go to one TDMS file. That's mine. This is my base. The customer will want it in there, whatever they use, because essentially they're churning it into MATLAB and such. So there's third party. So the next stage would be to take this and churning it into some custom. So I think I'm pretty much convinced that I want to do it like that. I could have used data plugins and the like. I looked at it and maybe I went off the idea.
So you write just that what's in that window to TMS file at the moment?
No, what actually happened is it went to a completely different state. Because it has to be a completely safe state to do the ARM, because these are million pound experiments.
Yeah.
So it goes into its own ARM mode. So it's actually, because I'm just churning a signal out, I could just turn it into one shot, and then you see it go into ARM mode. I press the button and it would do the same. But for speed, I wouldn't do it. So it's a completely different state. Yeah, and that's about it really. It's what we've got. So yeah, we've got all the saving experiment stuff, which is all SQLite. Configuration is all SQLite as well. So, and about, it's quite a long time. This is about 250 VIs. The servers are about 150 VIs. Not including the VI type stuff. It's a relatively large size thing. Bear in mind that our way of doing it means the VI does quite a lot. Just one thing. And it's transpired, it's good because it's got a lot of function points. You know, it's doing a lot. The other thing was I was labelling the graphs. This is where James's bit he showed me might be useful. What it's doing is bringing in all the cards and renaming them to my format, so I know which each channel is, because I need to know which channel is the rack name. The communications, just Bob standard UDP. So I had a UDP messaging channel, which all communications is done over, except for the waveform, because although I've only got 3 here, there's these 18 slot chassis that are going to be stacked with 4 channels of scopes, and there's going to be 8 of those. So there's a lot of data. It scares crap out of me. So each server throws up its own TCP channel port as well. So what happens in the background. Just see if I can get away from. There's various other entities you can save it for, load and save.
So when you're using SQLite for the configuration, you basically have like a channels table, a graphs table, using it.
Graphs and experiment table, an experiment table. I can show you that. It's all pretty open.
Yeah, something that's still happening.
My plan for this is to kind of make it open source.
Configuration.
Yeah.
So you should be able to check. Then see what channel. So when you get an event on the channel, you should be able to see which channel it is by just running the cursor over it. That's quite cool. Errors are generally to do with closing down asynchronous processes. They're very low on my list of things I'm interested in doing anything about at the moment. There you go. So it's the UDP queue. The messages are all in English as well. Something I was quite keen on. And you can log it so you can track, get a list of the actual communications, which is very handy for debugging. But I kind of like it because there's lots of toolkits around that I could have used. And in the end, I thought, no. And it's very interesting because John Conway, the guys who work with us, he does a lot of aerospace stuff, and he says that's actually the way ARINC is going. It's just UDP for distributed stuff. So it seems like a relatively good choice. This seems pretty robust as well. You can quite figure out things and get confused. So that's essentially the software. As you can see, it's not completely without issue. It's been quite a big project. Come on, come on, come on, I don't use many references, so it doesn't actually matter in my code. never gives me any problems. So, coding standards. We have, so I've got a code review. It's got a project number, it's got a number. So these are our coding standards. And you can see they're not very derivative. Because I disagree with it. Really, we're designers. So initial checks, these are things that are important. So you check out the repository prior to starting, ideally on a clean machine. So the repo needs to be transported. All our code we need to be able to go download it from our repo into any machine we have. No toolkits, no adding, VI package management. So that's enormously important. Run VI analyzer and sort out any high-level issues. I'll say I've done that, but test our execution trace toolkit. That's quite useful for finding open references and all that.
I don't use that
Hmm?
enough. I don't use that enough. I keep meaning to.
No, I don't really. I use it when I get memory leaks. Essentially, which is a bit retroactive. Now, so everyone in SSDC is working from a common base. We inflict rules on how projects should be set up, and this is how we like our projects to be set up. So there's the directory structure. But essentially, the same applies for the setting up the project. So we don't use anything other than folder auto-populating when we stick our VIs. So you have the main calling VI and sub VIs underneath it. Sub VIs get added. And it's served us very well. We don't get any cross-linking problems, any worries. And again, this coming in like this from the repository, just plug it down the machine, no problems. The reason why, what I've tried to do with each coding standards, is, so this is what we're looking for, but I've tried to put a why in as well. So it's really, LabVIEW always looks beneath it first. But then you're at the behest of its search paths. And to my mind, they've always been a bit weird and unpredictable. Depending on what machine you go on, the search path is different. And that's a bad thing, you know. Last thing I want is it pulling VIs from different places. Because this is supposed to be under version control. Source code control. No conflicts. So always have to clear that. Are there any to-do bookmarks? Let's have a little look, shall we? just for fun. There's one or two. Oh no, we don't have to do that. Let's bookmark manager. Right. You'll see. I still have plenty to do.
It's a nice bit of feedback for whoever does the tool. I get what it is. It makes the SVN tools built in. And I've got
Yeah, I like it. I'm a big fan of doing this. You know, and see it's great. I've got those too.
Anyway, the JavaScript ID that I use will, every time you go to check in, it will say this is to do, still in here. And I can see that could be quite a handy feature.
I learned a very good design rule in this, is if you have a timeout, don't ever put the to-do in there and just make it do what it should do through the timeout. So it's so all my interactions with that synchronization thing, I had this timeout. I thought, I don't really know what I'm going to do with that yet. I'll just make it act as if it's finished. And I carried on working, and I was thinking, this is all a bit flaky. Why is it doing all this? As soon as I wrote all the timeout stuff, it all became clear. But it cost me about 3 hours. Why is it so flaky?
Viewpoint systems.
Yeah.
Is that the one you said?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you properly. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
So
But it doesn't work for the next version of course. It's the
the user front panel, version number, always version number. I mean, that's one of our golden rules. The same, you need to be able to see the distributed software's version numbers from the client as well. That's also very, very useful to know.
Did you just type in the version number? I have the executable bullets version of the executable.
No, I do it manually, and I have a little VI constant
The VI
version number.
You just doesn't put it from the built application. You can put it from the built application.
You can.
Yeah,
Real-time systems like that, can you?
I don't know.
No, for
I've
me,
tried that.
the version number is it's not the version I'm working on, because we tend to run a contractor type repository type affair. So we have one person who's in charge of
Okay, sorry, Steve.
See you, mate. You have a nice holiday.
That's it. Just have a good Christmas.
You too.
You need to go too, so I wish you all good well.
Yeah, thanks for coming, sir. Yeah, so the version number for us is the version we give it to the customer at any one time. That's when we update versions. That was quite a big thing. So I'm not rolling back saying, oh, I was working yesterday, that's the new version. And the reason being is this contractor way of doing it, as far as I'm concerned, is you give a requirement. So Adrian's doing P&O stuff at the moment, and there's lots of requirements for user interface stuff. So he contracted to me to do the user interface stuff. So I did essentially this bit here of his job, handed in the queue and handed you the code. And then he puts it back in the repo. And it just makes life a lot easier. We try and make life as easy as possible. I'm not convinced lots of people put things into repositories to merge code. So
I'll put my own functionality in Synchronization.
it's better.
It's much easier.
How do you work? This might be touching on that, but how do you work 2 people on the same essentially VIs?
They don't.
You
contract. You need to be able to split your project.
So
down.
if you did that user interface loop, which forms part of a bigger VI,
Yeah.
do you do it in a separate VI and you copy and paste it into it?
Yeah, for that I just delivered back while it was one VI at the moment with the Q command and the test stub essentially showing how it works. And so
Okay, and then you take it, you copy and paste it, because I find, because
it's a little harder this
Git and
because
SVN and Mercurial and all those things are great when you, even Mercurial and Git, which is supposed to be distributed over a number of users, it's great when you're working on it by yourself, even on different machines and all over the place.
software is always
else
great when you work on it yourself.
It's just
Other people are paying the and the more people you have, the more those lines of communication increase, the more difficult it is. That's why we do the contract thing. We say, here's the deliverable I'm expecting from you, matey. You're not going to touch it. Anyone in the company can look at the repository, but we all know who the owner of each repository is.
You can do it where someone's in charge, but someone else is working on this component. Then you say that if there's any kind of conflicts, you're in charge of that component. So
Yeah.
I'm in charge of everything else, so my version has to.
at the moment I'm working on a project which has a whole bunch of libraries in it. And the nature of LabVIEW, which I've seen now, if there's a way to get around it, please tell me. If I open the project, all I need to do is, if I open it and try and close it, it's asking me to save everything.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I haven't changed anything. I don't want to have to save it and so I've got to go through everything and go save each VI. If I change something, if I add something,
that changed.
sorry?
It's to say type, you say why, it's to save it. Say type.
I'm not quite sure what it is, but sometimes
Will
it's
be
a whole
a-
lot
Got
list.
the
Is it different?
And it's like,
you got the cuts, the compile separated to.
Yep, that's checked. Running the same.
So the kind that has changed, something changes, they save information without the type depth in each file. And some changes if you don't want to say.
Is it
But
just
in that case, you
the
say that, fine, you say whatever you want, but when there's a reversion conflict, you are in charge of this part. You are not in charge of this part.
But I'm not making any changes. Just by opening the project.
Well, it used to be if you were
What
using
version of that?
sequences and stuff, it would do
14.
it.
Do you use strict that?
Sorry,
No.
not true. So just
We used to have it an old. I don't know if it happens now, but if you're doing a compare, it always, if you've got a sequence structure and it sort of redrew it every time and said it was a change. Said it was changed. Don't know,
Not sure.
something like that. That is quite sensitive to. Yeah.
the thing there's a ask you what's changed. There's a little link on that.
But I'll just say.
Click on that.
It normally just says recompiled or
Yeah,
something along those lines.
That's his link. That his paths are different.
So I've even gone with the guy I'm working with. I've even gone, where have you checked out your repository to? Because sometimes
What
Get
is
your
the what is
path
the
to
hierarchy?
path is different. And I said, okay, I'll recheck out the repository. It's exactly the same path, and it's still doing the same thing.
Honestly, all I tend to do in that situation is revert in afterwards.
And that's what I'm currently doing. If I change a VI, I save that VI. I save the VI, and when I close it, it says, "Do you want to save these changes?" I go, "No."
The difficult thing to keep in the back of your mind is that the LabVIEW code that you're creating isn't just the LabVIEW code.
Yes.
Each VI is carrying its binary package along behind it. So if there's something in that chain that may be inside of vi.lib that's not on the perfect version or is in some way internally marked that it will cause a recompilation, you haven't changed anything. But by opening it, you've caused a chain of events that effectively just gives you a dirty dot, and there is nothing you can do about it.
Okay.
I'd be tempted to do a mass compile because it could possibly be a read-only VI that is in the wrong position.
Yeah.
So that you cannot oversave it. So every time it's coming in, going, oh, I saved this as a 14. Oh, it's a 13.
Yeah.
If you do a mass compile, it may work, but it's
At least it will flag the fact that it couldn't save over the
Yeah.
top of whatever you've got there. And it's one of
If you
those
go
things that if you go back a couple of versions, it was even things like the date and time had changed, and that could affect your project file, which is to go back to the how many people you have working on a project. You can't easily share a project file between multiple developers because it was never designed to be able to do a merge. There are unique identifiers in the XML inside of projects, especially when you involve RT targets, that stop you being able to split pieces of code development and then bring them together.
And you gotta make sure your source code is not merging.
Yeah.
But some of them do, they'll merge a project and then suddenly like it's all.
I tried to merge it.
Yeah.
And the project file the other day because I was like, all I did was add a VI. So I was just like, I thought it takes a while, just pull the line in and try to open it, corrupt the project. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
revert back to it.
Everything, like all corrupt links, like all these conflicts, like what? What is this?
I'm very short on merging. Someone said, "Oh, we use merge united, so you're not managing a project."
To use it, what repos to use? SVN.
But I think the point is with the project file and things, that's a weakness in LabVIEW in the way you say that.
I've worked on many C
I don't
projects,
think
and
you
merging is a complete nightmare in there as well.
Oh no, but I mean,
It's just bad
the
practice
ideal
as well.
scenario is you should be able to both work on separate VIs in a repository.
Yeah.
And be able to.
If I commit my changes and you commit
So
your
you're not
changes.
merging an individual VI. Is my point. I don't think you should.
Well,
you should be able to avoid merging VIs.
Yes.
But
If you split your workload up, let's forget about what is the ideal practice. But if you split your workload up, so two people in your project team are working at the same VI at the same time, you deserve trouble. I'm afraid.
no, but this is what I mean.
Trouble.
It's not about having the same VI. The problem right now is even if you work on a completely different part of the project, because the project files can't you will both modify the project inherently in the way
You
lab
have different project files, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the other option. That's what we're talking about doing now. Because we've got one project which has the host and the RT in one project. We're thinking, okay, if I work on RT, I'm not necessarily touching any of the host VIs, but the project is changing, so there's going to cause conflict. So do we split everything out and have separate projects for every task or every item?
No, I mean,
I
what
do
we
that
would do is
course.
one person would export the project, so
Yeah.
not part of the version control. I would work on their bit. They email me their bit, and I put it in. Now, it sounds very cumbersome,
But that
it's easy.
around.
It's also
the-
good practice for code
I have
review.
projects for different parts.
Yeah.
And then one master build project, which loads everything and doesn't actually go.
Because what I've started doing is instead of opening the project, I now open the library, the LV lib.
Yeah.
Another project and then just drag in what you want.
You can have a project and point certain projects.
Can you?
Yeah, it's just an XML file pointing at another file.
I didn't realize you could projects within projects.
You won't see it as a tree opening up,
Okay.
but you to go. I've got Fred, Charlie, and Wilma working on these different projects. Have one master one that then, as you get given that whole code dump, you can just click on it to go into it. But as a matter of course, I will separate out RT development from host development from especially FPGA development into separate projects so that I can then just deal with, especially the FPGA side, my host has a bit file to refer to, not my host code takes 10 minutes to open because my FPGA code is huge. And I didn't need that, so
Yeah. Okay.
I use that as a habit, not as by design.
Okay.
I think one, I mean, the way that because everything we do is sort of component-based, what we call component action engine-based. You sit down and you define the enumerated types, which is all the actions that particular action engine do. You define its inputs and outputs. You put it into a repository as the repository master, empty, and then anyone can export that and say, go fill that up. Your contract, that's your job. Go for it. That's just management. That's nothing to do with tool chains and getting complex and all the bleating I hear. You think, just manage the interface. Write it down, on paper. Here's the interface. You deliver it to me via whatever purpose you want to deliver it to me, and I'll incorporate it in the project. Now, how big has a project got to be before that becomes a problem? I don't, I've never seen it. We work on big projects. But, this is something we've been doing since 2000. It's done exactly the same thing. You just have to do the hard work of writing down the interface and saying what you want each action engine to do, or each. But I mean, it's the same with LVU. You do the same. You say, here's the UML. I want this to do that. Can you deliver it to me, please? I've done the empty boxes and all the methods.
But that's group software design for any language. You
Yeah.
agree that if you are responsible for a box, anybody who gives or takes data from that box has to come to you to make a change to that. So you've got to well define those inputs and outputs more than an enum and a variant. You're not saying, oh, it's this data type. You're saying, what can you actually send me with that? And then if that needs to be changed, it's not their job to change it.
Well, the story I always tell, I worked on this oncology machine in Crawley, and there was a team of guys, C embedded, all the repo, everything, they did the merges, and invariably I come in and I sit there waiting for a running system, and it used to be a huge fight. And all me, no, your change broke it, your change broke it, there's all pointing at each other. Yeah, and it's all, and you think, it's got to be an easier way, and I firmly believe, they use the term architect, but it should be the same type of structure. You have guys contracted to whoever's in charge of that project. And it just takes out a lot of this complexity. I look at all the other systems, there's continuous integration stuff. I just think, oh God, it's just going to be a nightmare.
The way I get around your original problem of having the read out all modified, I'm using TFS because most of the stuff on the site's written in Microsoft. So, and I've got that integrated with LabVIEW, and whenever you do a check a commit, everything's marked as read only. And if you actually want to change something, you have to do the Control-M to edit mode, and it prompts, do you want to check this file out? So anything I open is all my LabVIEW files are read only. So I only commit or unmark the read only when I check them out. So it makes my life a little bit easier.
Okay. See, I can do that on this VN.
I've got the same issue on this project actually. I've got a load of old acquired sort of Agilent which runs on real time. So if it's not on real time, you can have Agilent type scopes as well as NI type scopes. But every time it saves to real time, it goes, oh, you need to save these Agilent scopes. Even though I've disabled it, they're not even part of the project. You know, I've completely taken them out now. So it's just there as the class structure. I'm not going to delete that, but I've taken the actual references to it. Every time it goes, oh, you want to save all your Agilent scopes because you're going down on the real time.
Yeah. No. But I'll definitely look at that. But I think it could be a mass compile because I've been given VR packages, some libraries, and I don't know what those would create. What the original source code version of LabVIEW was.
Are those in VI library or?
They VI Lab, yes.
Take them out and put them under your own.
Yeah.
Keep it under the project. It's one project, take everything that you can that isn't.
Even the stuff in VI Lab.
If it's not National Instruments stuff.
And then rename it so it's your project, so then it can't be mixed up.
Just stick it out we live for that particular one.
Oh, that, yeah, I was renamed it.
Sure, colour.
The clean machine checkout is a good thing.
Only
'Cause I've
thing in front
had
of it.
DLLs where, get it, and the DLL's in the project, it's just not the one that's linked.
That's what I have.
Yeah.
That's a big problem. When you recompile the DLL, you've got to reboot LabVIEW.
Well, one of the reasons for having a repository in the cloud, as it were, is so that you can park it on any machine. I've had to test it.
You know, you find your DLL in like, sys.64, not, that's the one it's linked to, but of course it doesn't give you, because it's part of the system, you can't see, the only reason you know it is because it doesn't give you the path to the DLL. So it's got to be in the system.
Yeah, what we do now is we always park all the DLLs in the directory as well and reference them, where they're not National Instruments.
Is that on your style guide?
What?
That sort of stuff, like where the files are?
Yes, as part of the project setup.
Yeah.
So we got a refer to a document which tells you how to set up. So we got the work instructions.
All right, what's the next time?
See you later.
Yeah, we've got to go soon as well. Are you?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to stop. We can do this next time. It'll be better on.
I do like that while you've got the code up, having the enums where they're being used.
Yeah.
Because the type of just accessible as it's drop down non-functioning.
Yeah.
But it's to hand.
Oh yeah, VI analyzer. I hate one.
Oh yeah.
So do
that labelling is enormously important for telephone support.
Yeah, that's a big.
The other thing I really like. It's the wrong one. So if we go on a server, is the actually splitting states and transitions in a state machine. If you look at most of what is advertised as a state machine, it's not a state machine because it has no transitions. So you should have two enumerations. You should have all your states and then all your transitions because they're completely different things in the diagram. So we have a transition queue here. So it goes into the state and you fire a transition. And that can happen anywhere. That's made it follow the diagram. So we do a state transition diagram. So if you look at that.
That's a state diagram, not a state machine.
Well, it should follow the state diagram. A state machine should follow the state diagram. You know, because you're. So this one here is actually got the state diagram as part of it. Let's transition in there, so I'll just subdivided it. So we're essentially it's doing the same thing. In a state, position, but you can actually follow the process through the step. And that's been a big step up. I like that. Kind of a little thing, but it's made a lot of difference.
So you refer to that quite a lot then, the diagram
Yeah, yeah.
sketch.
Well, I like state transition diagrams. Good for air traffic. About one of the few diagrams I actually do. Protocol diagrams are very good one for this type of thing. Client says this, server does this, client does this. They're quite good, but you only use them.
Yeah, I use them quite a bit when you need to understand timing of the transactions as well to some extent. What order does what?
This loop here is been a very useful one. This is essentially an echo loop. So I send a command via this, and it parks it on a. Said, oh, I've sent this command. Now each of the servers then, when it receives the command, it echoes it back. If it receives that echo, it takes it off essentially the stack. But if it doesn't, take it off the end of the stack after 200 milliseconds, it will send it again.
So this is how you're managing potential loss.
Because it's usually good.
Yeah.
And of course, if it goes around a few times and it doesn't come off the stack, then I throw an error.
Yeah.
I like that. That's been useful.
Is that sort of instead of a simple watchdog?
Oh no, I'll do a watchdog as well. But it's what happens is when this is doing something like harming and that, it's sometimes when it's ripping through the states, it sometimes misses the transition. And now, if it misses the transition, it will just sit there and go, oh, I'm not receiving an echo, so I'll get it again. That's made, that means you then don't have to manage all of that asynchronous crap.
Yeah.
Because it does do it for you. It's managing all these asynchronous communications is actually quite difficult.
Something I've started doing with my flowcharts I've got for that, rather than pasting them as JPEGs, using ASCII art websites and then just pasting them as text boxes, so anybody can physically go in and change them and see them quite usefully then.
ASCII art?
I think it's called ASCIIflow.com or something like that. But you literally can just draw boxes and arrows and it exports it as a text ASCII for you, so you can just paste
Stick a link on the forum.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to see much code, so I think everyone's itching to go Christmas. So we can roll it over. I'm quite keen to carry on with the code reviewing thing. I'll go through our standards before we go. So the user front panel is a version number to us. It's very important. Control theme consistent. General tick. So private front panels. Essentially, we always separate inputs and outputs and locals. Not always. So if there's local data to be seen, always do that. Enumerated commands on action engines always set to required. So from a block diagram point of view, we're not prescriptive really at all. It's just, does it clearly describe the problem it's trying to solve? And that's it. We bash it. Do you use standard? So I'm very strong on saying queues are for passing data, event structures for handling events, SQLs for databases. Using the right thing. Don't use the wrong thing just because it can.
Avoid using inappropriate patterns as standard.
Oh yeah.
Don't do the wrong thing.
No, because it's aimed. It's well.
If
you're
under say what those patterns are.
Well, don't use the actor framework if nothing in your project is asynchronous or needs asynchronicity.
Or if you're uncomfortable and there's that.
See, that's a line for the other people. Huh? Yeah, I need it.
So you need the actor.
But that's what I'm saying. People are banging asynchronicity in everything. Well, actually, you don't need. That's a complexity which has got a cost. If you're comfortable with it in the short term, you go for it because that will be the response to that. So if you say I can turn this out much easier because I'm comfortable with it, then you just say that's the response to that question. So it's not prohibitive in that you shall not. It's just avoid.
It's keep it simple, stupid, but it's the level of simplicity is down to whoever put it together.
Well, it should be only factors more complex than the problem. If it's hundreds of times more complex than the problem, then there's something wrong. Clearly labelled structures are very keen on that. Very keen on the Boolean for the true state labelling. That's really been a big improvement for us. Colour coding. I got some feedback actually from the customer on that. Because he looked at an old project before we did it and a new one that's done it, and he put that as one of the most important improvements. So saying just having it colour coded and the icons sort of standardised, just because we used to just do the white icons with the name. Off you go.
Well, I was thinking of the board that it has a bar that's consistent with the wire when you're doing an object, so it's clear you can follow it.
Yeah.
So everything allows it to link together, so you can see, you can follow it.
Yeah, I was very interested when you had your little thing with error and yellow and why yellow, because you asked why yellow. Somebody asked why yellow. Yeah. I don't know. Yes, are icons complete?
Do them at the beginning. If you have a big project and you need to go and change all the icons, it's just dull. I did that the other day. I thought,
yeah, I always do it.
And then I look at the icons and I'm like, going through the project, damn, I've done a lot of VR with no icons.
Yeah,
But how many errors did you find while you were doing it? None.
I don't know. I was just editing.
I like that sort of
just took it forever. It's like,
But I like that sort of thing sometimes because you see something really obvious that you
yes,
just
no,
miss.
yeah, you just
Yeah, because that's actually because you probably do the work, then leave it, and then coming back to my timeout thing, I did all these timeout stuff and just bodged around it just because I wanted to see the thing working, and then never came back to it. Should have. But that's it. I mean, we have 11 pages, but a lot of that sort of explanation. So there really isn't much to our coding standards. But the other aspect is what I would probably do now. Not I'm going to, but the next step was that I need to then go through and describe the architecture myself to you and how we're doing the different things. And that's actually, part of the code reviews. It works like this, and because you sometimes design yourself in a tunnel, that's where you pick up the. Why don't you just do this?
Yeah. When you do, so is this more of a verbal interaction? Because I've seen guys they do full like software description documents of their whole project.
Yeah, we don't.
When it's not needed, but it's like, you don't need.
No, the source code. The source code is the only document that doesn't lie.
You don't.
So this is
make
really
us an
interesting,
overall
isn't it?
document, but not this state machine does this.
Yeah.
this
But you
state
do.
machine
You
does
haven't
this,
even
this
had to
state
do
does
it
this,
for
just like
your customer.
redoing the project. It's Word document.
So I've got that situation right now where one of my customers basically said we need full detailed design documentation for the whole project. So it's like, so you want me to rewrite the project which is already basically complete in Word, essentially?
Yeah, and that's.
But I was curious to see, because you guys probably work on similar projects, I kind of see two extremes is just let the code do the talking, up to you have so much documented that you can rewrite it purely out of that document.
That
what do you
document,
do as a
document is
standard
only valid
at that moment?
at that moment in time. It's a small moment. You change your code in any way or form, that document is then invalid. So isn't the only document that is truthful and honest the source code?
And you've got to be really.
It depends what that document is there for. As you just said, the other end is, could you redesign that software based on that document? And
Well, then you wouldn't be dealing with the details of LabVIEW. That would be the requirements document.
Well, the
Showing them how you do it in LabVIEW is only useful for doing it again in LabVIEW.
requirements document is what everybody should have at the start. It's kind of it includes in the name. The companies that I worked for a while ago that had architectural design document and software design documents weren't around the principle of what would you do in an ideal world, as in I need a block that does this, a block that does this, and we'll work on the finer detail inside the software design document. It was taking into account what environment you're going to be using for this, how are you going to approach the problem. So if that was to be redeveloped in the same language, because they've lost the software or have lost the capability to uprev it. They've got your thought processes documented down with enough detail.
If they've lost the source code, they would have lost those documents. How comes those documents survived, but the source code didn't? Which is the most important.
It's reading them out there.
I mean, yeah, well, what we try to do is if they want documents like that, we put it as a separate line item and we put a considerable cost on it.
Yeah.
And then they have to evaluate, because it's a really easy thing, you know, they go to project management school and say, oh, yes, you need complete documentation. Oh, okay, well, what define complete then?
Yeah.
Because if you want complete documentation, it's going to cost you, I don't know, 3/4 of the project cost.
Yeah.
You know, that level.
Yeah.
Because it is, because it's one, it's a pain in the ass, you don't want to do it. But two, it's actually quite hard.
And you're also going to be really diligent to keep it updated, because they say it's only valid for that date, that point of time. If you change something in your code, even if it's just over a week or 2 weeks, and then you want to go update your document, you're going to go, what have I changed from my document? You've got to reread your document.
Just will not, on a complex project, would always be alive. 100%.
Yeah.
It would always be out of date, it would always be alive.
So I'm taking it in general in this room, then people to this end of the spectrum of let the code
Yes,
sort of-
more.
Well, if they want to print out the
But
code,
it's-
give them a print out the code.
I think actually, if they want to use a manual, so I used to.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that's actually quite a good functional description of the code normally.
Yeah.
And you can have a small chapter, what's under the hood.
But an architectural design document, is fine. That's a fine document. You know, I could do that here. We've used queues to do this.
Yes.
We've done state machines here. It's you know, the state machine will work like this. That's a completely different document, and useful document than just documenting the code.
Yeah.
And the same with comments in a VI. If your comments are only saying what the VI's do, they're completely defunct.
Yeah.
They should be there to, like, I put the state machine in there because it kind of helps you debug the VI.
So I mean that's the interesting thing, and that's where I think there is something for it, certainly architectural design, and maybe something a bit more specific than that. Because what I found interesting is as I've done more and more diagramming, and by diagrams I mean state machines I've always done anyway, but I'm doing a bit more class diagrams, a lot of sequence diagrams that I really like, which is like the protocol diagrams, like I said. And what I do like about it is that it does let you see the problem from a different perspective, which is interesting. So there's some value in that. But yeah, I was curious to see if
I do a lot of scribblings. I mean, if you look at the paperwork associated with this, there's a lot of diagrams, there's a lot of scribbling, there's a lot of state machines, there's a lot of paperwork.
I put diagrams in the code using VI references and little arrows. Right, so I mean, if you've got 6 key VIs, how they're related, at the top level, you put the references to those 6 VIs and arrows to explain what they do. This guy talks to this guy launches that guy, this guy calls that guy.
okay.
And then you just click on them and use that to navigate your.
Yeah, and that, to my mind, is really useful usage of commenting. That's what I would use. To
The
do.
top level, look at the top, there's some VI references and some arrows.
Generally, if I'm having to write a comment to explain the code, it means that the code source code is difficult, so I need to refactor.
Also, you want that in the source code.
Yeah. I find that as a really useful test of code quality generally.
Yeah.
If I find it hard to go in and change it, something's wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's one question on documentation. Are you going to document this code review and how are you going to do it?
I didn't actually get to the code.
No, but would you have?
Yes.
Would you have had a structure for documenting the review?
Well, essentially, all I would do is comments would go at the end of this. This is a checklist, so we go down the
You're like-
checklist. Scribbling comments. It's got a document number.
So it's a
already.
major rework, you'll put it in.
Yeah. Yeah. Skip out. But I had
I'm just going to start at the top and just keep going.
the largest customer sort of dealing with code. They were being really predictive, sort of saying, "Oh, you shouldn't have, I don't know, 5 cases in a case study."
But you do it in a switch statement.
Hey, you can have 50.
Oh, it's really bad. Why? Why is it really bad? What's bad about that? You know, that why is probably the most important question you need to, you know, when you put this prohibition there, don't use secret structures. Why? So global, this program is fairly global heavy into lots of graphs, so I don't know. using global too. I have to because I need global data. So, you know, that's the why. I've got lots of global data that needs accessing, so I have to use global.
Some of these things, the things that you would look at to say, I should do this, I shouldn't do this, because that makes sense to do. So case structure, how many things you put in it is I need to do it this way. If you look at the reason that LabVIEW came about in the first place, it was so that somebody who couldn't really program could then try and program. So instead of explaining with a flowchart what a C programmer would have to create for them, then if you do it graphically, they can do it themselves. If we're trying to use the code that we've implemented based on a non-flowchart starting point, it's got to be in a useful format for somebody who can't program in LabVIEW to pick up, for that to be the document in itself, because you're not talking their language anymore.
It's a historical thing. It's to do with cyclic complexity, cyclometric complexity. Is how many branches you have. Lots of branches are bad. But they've recently done, probably about 2 or 3 years ago, they did a study to see where our bugs are hiding.
It's not there.
It's completely debugged. It's a complete fallacy that lots of branches cause problems in code. But it's historic. You know, probably about 25 years ago, somebody said that was a really bad thing to do.
I'm just
Can you link
advocating
to real
that this
time?
is great
Can you link
if
the
you can
reference to
program
real?
in LabVIEW.
It could be in.
Yes.
It could be in that
Now,
application, isn't it?
is it the case that the person asking you to do the job can't program in LabVIEW, and you're trying to make your LabVIEW coding or self-documenting so that they can try and understand what's going on, or do you try and speak back in their language?
Yeah.
For me, that's the documentation point, because I could show somebody this and I go, well, you drew it, where's the code? And as soon as you're having that argument, it's not self-documenting anymore, even though we can look at it and go, this is great, completely get what it is. If you're not documenting back in their language.
I don't know, I'm not terribly sympathetic with LabVIEW being a tool for non-programmers anymore.
No, I'm just going back to like the origin.
I know.
So this is the diagram at the top level. It's above the main loop, which is the main program. I just use little links to all the other things that are going, and then put key stuff, so not everything. It shows the key, main launches all the others, and this is how the data flows through. There's the core data collection things, and they go through the gather component, which gathers calls fitting, and the synth fits along. And so you can sort of.
So floating references don't.
Yeah,
They don't break.
And then if you want to say, well, what the hell is this doing?
That's genius.
You can actually just
I really
bring
like
it up.
Yeah.
So I mean, I always put the dynamic VIs into an empty, always make it part of the hierarchy of like main programs. I always put it in a falsely.
Commented out.
Yeah.
But that's
So I like that.
That's fair. So you want to say, well, what does this one do? You just double click on it.
Can you link if you had a real time platform? Could you link across, or is it got to be on
I
the
don't
same
know.
platform?
I haven't worked on real time forever, so.
This would, if you opened it, it would open it on the computer.
That platform, yeah. Anyway,
But do they? I suppose if they're broken, then they're broken.
No.
No,
you've never.
That's the only reason.
you can't do this if you're dynamically loading code and you want it to be not linked, because obviously this links.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then
Yeah, I like that.
then you can quickly figure out what's going on and say, well, where did I do this time?
Earning money today, James.
No.
Got with 2 today.
Thanks very much.
Well, have a nice Christmas,
Okay,
everyone.
see you all next year.
We might carry on if we're interested in actually doing the code bit of the code. Yeah.
It's your fault.
Yeah, I don't do happy birthday.
We've got a
I'm
cake.
getting too near 50. To the other side of it.
Like, yeah, no, you're alive.
That's what Chris Ralph said to me. He said every day you wake up is a bonus. Well, thanks, mate.
In dog years you will take.
Yeah.